you could hear Carlos, and I'll have him as a subsidiary or something. My name is Ted L. Maloy. I was an Army Combat Infantry Sergeant in Korea. My specialty was as a Army Combat mortar, 81 millimeter mortar forward observer. I am now an infantry lieutenant colonel retired. I joined the Army in a place called Clinton, Oklahoma, the Army National Guard I joined in 1947. My enlistment then was the 19th of June 1947. 3 years later, my enlistment was up. That was June 1950, which if you think about it, I had a rough time maybe deciding whether to re-up or not. I re-upped. Therefore, I stayed with the Army National Guard. That brings up the date, September 1, 1950. The 45th Infantry Division had been activated, was going to Campstone, either by train or by vehicle. It arrived there with 8,000 Army National Guardsmen, many of whom were officers and enlisted people of the 45th in World War II. Polk was a World War II camp. It took 30 days for the Guard to get it cleaned up and ready to go. 1 October, special training or special details were offered to various non-commissioned officers, NCOs it's known as. I was sent to Fort Riley, Kansas as a cadre with the 10th Mountain Division, who was conducting basic training for draftees. Therefore, that was part of my duty when they finished that base as an instructor and as a drill sergeant. When they got that finished of their basic, which had been into half of it already, then my time was done, so back to the 45th on January 1st, 1951. I was assigned at that time as an 81 millimeter mortar person again, which was fine with me. There was extensive training performed, but in March 51, the 45th Division was ordered to Japan's north large rudimentary island known as Hokkaido, which had a culture of about 1,700. No vehicles, straw huts, etc. But a very fine place to have training for an infantry unit, or infantry division for that matter. We boarded trains and went to New Orleans to get there, picked up by the troop ships, which took about 30 days to get there, and this is going to take more than 10 minutes. So we were headed to the canal and got to there arriving late April. The troops were moved by train, and I forgot that this was the winter at Fort Polk, Louisiana. Some of you probably can't find this fellow, and this was training in the wintertime. And I've got something here I've got to get off. This is Hokkaido. Can you see it over here?
Yeah.
Can you see it? We landed right here. We grabbed the train, train took us to Chitosi, Inawa, and to Sapporo. This was the 3 regiments, and I'm only talking infantry. It was a tent city, a nice one at Chitosi. This one had dirt floors, no lights, and all that kind of stuff. This one had all the headquarters buildings, and everything was nice. So there was a rotation done among the 3 regiments so that everybody got to get a taste of all of it. The problem with, or not, the mission for the 45th Division was, you can see here, the island, which we were concerned with Russia and with the Chinese. And whatever training we were doing, if we needed to drop and get into the war, which we could hear what was going on, then you drop the training until you could take care of what the problem was. Never was a problem. So the training continued on, and this is field training, and you'll recognize to the spot that you're going to put it down, and I'm talking about 6 weapons, and that's about 3.2 inches, something of that nature. And yeah, okay. This is Korea. We got the call. There were all different types of training done beforehand. Assault off of a troop train. I mentioned I had trouble with words. Troop ship. We got on the ladders that are made out of rope, got into the assault boats, and actually on Hokkaido made the beach landings. That was rather interesting. All right, being in Korea, this line is obvious to you. That's the line of the 48th parallel. You know, this is Chosin Reservoir. You know that we made it there, then we did not have sufficient forces to do anything, and we end up at Pusan. The Marines came around to Incheon. The Army troops were able to get up, and this became the MLR, or the main line of resistance. The center part of it was right here, which is where I ended up. And I think Duncan ended up at Reno and
go east, all the way east.
All the way east, you're over here.
No,
the other way.
Okay, east. Okay, yeah. Well, around Heartbreak Bridge. Okay, and that part of it. So we're there, and we got there, all the troops there about a little bit before Christmas. Had Christmas in the snow, in sea rations, and the night of the 26th, we replaced two regiments in the MLR, and replaced the 1st Cav Division, which had been torn all up to heck and had really got the Chinese taken care of. What you'll find if you're there, this really is a place that has accessibility easy to this area, one of them being Chorwan, and if you didn't keep them down, it became a defense, and it would have killed millions, well that's a little, hundreds of thousands on both sides if you started trying to win the war. But there was a lot of fighting. Foreground, little islands are out. The enemy had it one night, we had it the day, and that type of situation. I missed one item at the training in Hokkaido, I was assigned as an umpire with duties of grading, helping squads, platoons, and the companies as they performed their advanced tactics of attacking aggressors, which were other 45th Division people. There was training such as live firing of all division weaponry, infantry loading aboard a troop ship. I'm covered that, and that brings me back up to date. Now I was a mortarman, and on the line at right here, which was Old Baldy. And fired in all of my barrages and my
concentration.
Thank you. You got it. I should have mentioned that first. If I had trouble with a word, just yell it out. And had that done, and when I got it all done, took one day, and a day or two later, we were across from a Chinese-held, fairly sized hill, and had a listening post on one side of it, and I had some barrages around it. The listening post called in and said, "We've got trouble." I was given authorization to shoot 6 guns, 1 round at the barrage that I knew of where it was, near that listening post, and that's all we shot. The listening post came in the next day. We went out during the day, and we're talking about 2 feet snow, things of that nature, 20 below 0. When we first got there, we only had field jackets, no poncho, parkas, no caps, things of that nature. I can't say that those rounds killed those 5 Chinese that were trying to come up to the listening post, but they were there. And I picked up this Thompson sub from the lieutenant, I guess he was, which we, the U.S., sold to the Russians and Chinese after World War II. But there's better to carry that Thompson sub than it was an M1. As a port observer, I wasn't supposed to be carrying the M1 anyway, but if they tell you to do it, you're going to do it. Okay. There were many places that I was involved in the combat. But I'm going to touch only 3, and one is on Old Baldy, which I'll check later, but I mentioned about Old Baldy, and right across from it, about from here to there, was the Chinese dug in. And later on, I'll elaborate on it. This is the 45th Division's headquarters at that, as we got there. And you can see what the weather looked like and what the small mountains looked like. And that's about all there is to say about that one. But here is the line Jamestown West sector that the 45th Division had. And anything in blue in this way, of course, is us. Anything in red is us. That's another thing out there.
Chinese.
And in the middle was no man's land. So, having said that, this hill is 223, which is where the Chinese were, and this was the Old Baldy, which we were trying to get them out of, and I was right here with that one. You can see, if you have troubles looking at or seeing it, I'll open this up later when you come take a look at it. And the main part of this, though, is T-bone. I might go back and digress. This was known as Pork Chop Hill, as you see. And the best and prettiest thing that was so I really enjoyed was P-51s beating the hell out of the Chinese with napalm and everything else right there. Then I went back in relief, not very often, and my company commander came to me, which is unusual, and said, "Why don't you take a triple of those 81s, because one of the battalions had been overrun," which is right here. You can see a little blue place called Erie. This is all Chinese. And I didn't show you what I probably shouldn't take the time, but I will. What it looks like. Well, I'll go back.
Yeah, go for it.
No, here it is. This is an example of one of those emplacements on a hill. And this is wire. This is us. And these are trenches with us in them, all types of weapons like machine gun, AR, automatic rifle, etc., etc. The Chinese came down off of the T-bone and came around like this. The wire was blowing here, the wire was blowing here, the wire was blowing here, and this was about 40 of our men in there. Those men killed about 40 Chinese, and we lost 6 dead and 2 that were